The sky over Kerrville was the kind of gray that settles into your bones. A slow drizzle tapped against the windshield as I parked outside the funeral home, the same one that had held my grandfather's service 2 decades ago. Everything looked smaller now. Maybe that's what grief does, shrinks the world around you until it's just you and the ache. I stepped inside the wooden chapel, blinking under the soft yellow lights. It smelled like old pine and damp carpet. The pews were filled with people I recognized but hadn't spoken to in years. Their faces were polite, distant. No one met my eye for long. That was fine by me. I didn't come here for them. My mother's casket stood at the front, closed, per her wishes. She hated the idea of people staring at her after death. "Let them remember me upright and in charge," she'd once said. That line hit me harder than I expected. Nadine sat 2 rows ahead, stiff-backed, a marble statue of grief. Her husband sat beside her, hand on her knee like a paperweight. My father, Delroy, loomed at the far end of the row, arms folded, face unreadable. No tears, not even a flicker. The man looked like he was waiting on a dentist appointment, not burying his wife. I sat alone in the 3rd row, surrounded by whispers and the weight of things unsaid. The room fell quiet as the minister stood and began the eulogy, but my mind drifted. Mom's voice echoed in my head, that dry wit, her sharp observations. "Don't wait until someone's gone to appreciate them," she used to say, usually while folding laundry or slicing apples. It was her way of scolding without raising her voice. I should have visited more. I could blame work, distance, but the truth was uglier. It was Delroy. Every visit felt like walking into a war zone. He always had something to say, too soft, too sensitive, too much like my mother. Meanwhile, Nadine could do no wrong. She never lifted a finger to help Mom, yet somehow she was always the responsible one. A knot formed in my chest. Regret, guilt. But beneath it, something steadier, a vow. I would carry my mother's strength, even if it choked me. I owed her that much. After the service, I slipped out into the hallway to breathe. That's when I heard it. Delroy's voice. Too loud, too casual. I paused behind the corner, heart slowing to a crawl. "Finally free," he said, laughing. "The old witch's funeral is done. I'm a free man now." I didn't move. I couldn't. Every word felt like a slap. A woman's voice, low and amused, answered him. "And that life insurance check doesn't hurt either." I peeked around the corner. Red dress. Lipstick too bright for morning. Her hand touched his arm like they were planning a vacation, not just burying his wife. My stomach flipped. The grief that had dulled everything sharpened into something else. Anger. No. Fury. My fingers curled into fists. I stepped back, silent. I didn't confront them. Not yet. I needed to think, to see what this really was. But a switch flipped inside me. A line crossed. Back in the reception room, people sipped coffee and made small talk, the way folks do when death feels inconvenient. I kept to the edges, trying to steady my breathing. Then Delroy walked over, drink in hand, smile tight. "Well, look who decided to show up," he said, loud enough for nearby ears. "Didn't think you'd make it, considering you've never been much use." The room quieted slightly. Eyes darted. Nadine looked away. I met his gaze. I didn't cry. Didn't flinch. "Thanks for the reminder, Delroy," I said, voice flat. That wiped the smirk off his face. I turned and walked out before he could say anything else. In the car, I sat behind the wheel, hands trembling. Not from fear, not anymore. From the realization that I had spent my entire life trying to earn crumbs from a man who never wanted me fed. Mom once told me, "He'll crumble the moment you stop feeding his fire." I didn't understand it then. I do now. I stared at the funeral home. Delroy stood at the door, that woman in red now hanging onto his arm like a trophy. Something broke in me, and something else settled in its place. No more silence, no more swallowing the hurt. If he thought he could dance on my mother's grave, he was wrong. That was the next morning, I woke to the same wallpaper I used to stare at when I was 16. Faded daisies that had long since lost their color. The room hadn't changed much, still smelled faintly of lavender and old furniture polish. Outside, the clouds lingered like the day before, low and gray, as if the town hadn't moved on either. Lying there in the stillness, I replayed everything: Delroy's words, the way he laughed, and that woman in red. I felt nothing at first. Not sadness, not even shock anymore. It was like my emotions were sitting in the next room, waiting for permission to come back in. But under the numbness, something hot simmered, a quiet fury that wouldn't settle. I started thinking back. Those offhand comments Mom used to make. The phone calls she ended too quickly. The way her handwriting got shaky toward the end. Little things that hadn't meant anything until now. I told myself I'd stay through the week. Clean up. Handle what needed handling. But mostly, I needed answers. Downstairs, I started digging. The house was still in disarray from the funeral, but I went straight to the small cabinet where Mom kept her important stuff. The box was still there, the lock untouched. I knew the combination like I knew my own name, my birthday. She never changed it. Inside, it was the usual: insurance forms, a few medical documents, utility bills, but in the middle was a printed bank statement, not unusual, until I saw the date. It was printed 2 days after her death. I sat down on the carpet, legs crossed like a kid, the paper shaking in my hands. There it was, clear as day. A wire transfer for $40,000 to someone I'd never heard of. Under the note, it read, "Personal project." I stared at it like it might explain itself if I waited long enough. Mom didn't do projects. Not big ones. Not in the last year, not while her health was declining. And she sure as hell didn't just hand out that kind of money. Delroy didn't have her passwords, or at least he wasn't supposed to. My first instinct was confusion, then suspicion. I turned the statement over, checked the corners like there might be more hidden underneath. Nothing. It wasn't just strange, it was wrong. She was gone, and someone had moved money, her money, afterward. Either she'd been manipulated while she was alive, or someone had gotten into her account after she passed. Neither possibility sat right. I remembered our last call. She sounded tired, not just sick tired, something else, guarded. And when I asked if she needed anything, she just said, No, everything's handled." Everything wasn't handled. It was hidden. I leaned back against the side of the bed, paper still in hand, and whispered to the empty room, "What were you trying to protect me from, Mom? Maybe the truth, maybe herself, maybe him." I snapped a photo of the statement, locked it in a hidden folder on my phone, then placed the original back in the box, under the older files. I needed time to think, without tipping my hand. That afternoon, we all ended up at the diner on Main, same one we used to eat at after church. The clinking of silverware and hum of conversation were background noise to the silence between us. Delroy was in rare form, bragging to the waitress about how he'd handled everything smoothly. Said it like he deserved applause. Nadine nodded like she was listening, but never looked up from her phone. I stirred my coffee, watching them both, waiting. "So," I said, voice casual, "did Mom ever mention a personal project to either of you?" Delroy's fork paused mid-air, just for a second, but I saw it. "No," he said slowly. "Why?" Nadine didn't even glance up. She was tired all the time. Probably just her old donation thing or whatever. But Mom never used that phrase. Personal project. She called her causes chores worth doing. Always had. I nodded like I believed them. But in that moment, I knew I couldn't trust a word either of them said. Later that night, I sat at her old desk, lit one of the emerald candles she used to love. The flame flickered like it was keeping watch. I opened her journal, but it was blank. Typical. She never wrote things down she didn't want found. So I started my own. Not because I thought anyone would read it, but because I needed to hear myself think, to lay the puzzle pieces out where I could see them. I didn't cry. I didn't even try. Crying felt like something people did when they believed someone might comfort them. I parked on Main Street in Kerrville, heart pounding like it knew the truth I was about to chase. The bank branch loomed ahead, quiet Monday morning, lights just flicking on. I stepped inside, pressing the bell. Mrs. Hernandez greeted me with a soft smile. She looked older than the last time I saw her. Hair streaked gray, blouse buttoned too tightly. I told her I was managing my mother's estate, asking casually about account activity in her name. She hesitated, then murmured, "Yes, there's been an unusual withdrawal pattern in the past month." Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. Something in her voice cracked. I asked for copies of statements. She said I'd need proper estate paperwork. Before she could retreat, I followed, pushing just enough. "It's odd she stopped coming in last week. Someone who looked like her," she said, voice low. My pulse raced. I nodded, smiling faintly. "Thank you, Mrs. Hernandez." I turned away before her confusion showed. I'd gotten what I needed. Back home, I rummaged through Mom's desk. I found her old flip phone, cracked screen, resting on her charger. I almost tossed it, until I saw the voicemail icon glowing. I fumbled, opened it, and listened. Her voice trembled, breath short. "I think he knows I'm planning something. If anything happens..." Then static and a click. Silence. My hand shook. The phone felt heavy in my grip. A seed of dread rooted deep. At dinner, I brought up the phone. Delroy laughed as if it were absurd. "That old junk?" he said. Nadine chimed in. She always was paranoid, thinking things were bugged. I nodded, small laugh, but I caught the tension in their voices. They were practiced liars. The lines felt rehearsed. I remembered Mom's words. "Silence is how monsters survive." And I felt how gaslighting works. Erode your sense of what's real until you doubt yourself. I swallowed the urge to argue. Later that night, I called an attorney friend in Austin. He told me if I'm on the death certificate, I can subpoena records, force transparency. I went to the study and found an envelope marked, "If Danielle asks, give her this." Inside, old statements and a notary document naming me power of attorney. Undated, edges smudged. Someone had meant this to be found, or hidden. I sat on the floor, piecing fragments. The wire transfer, Mrs. Hernandez's slip, this envelope, the voicemail. They aligned with the week Mom stopped returning my calls. I stared at the smudged signature. Someone tampered. I stood in front of the mirror, phone in hand. My reflection looked hollow, determined. I don't care if it ruins everything. I need to know the truth, I told myself. The quiet daughter was gone. The investigator was emerging. I arrived at the probate office just after 9, the morning light gray and heavy outside. Sam walked beside me, files under his arm. My heart thudded, not with fear, but a cold certainty. Things were about to change. We passed the mahogany doors and sat in a waiting room filled with pamphlets about estate law and grief counseling. Everything in that room felt polite, sterile. I forced calm breaths. When my name was called, Sam flanked me. As we entered the clerk's office, the air shifted. Marcus sat behind his lawyer, shoulders broad, expression smug. The clerk looked reluctant. Sam leaned in quietly to me. "He's already filed a new, corrected will. You're excluded entirely." My breath caught. The man who chewed me up and spat me out once again wielded paper against me. Marcus's attorney cleared his throat and delivered the line with practiced detachment. The prior will was invalid, unsigned pages, procedural errors. My chest tightened. Everything he claimed was technical, but I'd known my mother's hand. She never made sloppy mistakes. I looked at my father's face, still unreadable. The clerk shifted uncomfortably. I asked to see the document. She began to hand it over but hesitated. I stared quietly, letting her know I wouldn't relent. I left moments later, envelope in hand, emotions flaring just beneath the surface. Back at the house, the study was dim. I traced my fingers along the edge of the desk until I found a hidden drawer. Inside lay an envelope addressed in Mom's cursive. "To my Delaney, only you." My breath froze. Inside, her handwriting, delicate and firm, she feared Marcus's control. She'd tried to protect me. There was a codicil she intended to file, delaying transfer of assets until I was safe. Her final plea: I may die, but the truth must live. Despair flared, then recoiled. I slipped it into my pocket, stunned by hope. This was proof. Her legacy, not his rewrite. That evening, Marcus hosted a gathering to diffuse rumors. I showed up quietly. He rose to speak before dinner was served. I fulfilled my duty, he said, smooth and practiced. My wife's original will was amateurish. I corrected it properly. Nadine chimed in, accusing me of being careless with money, irresponsible. Their voices were synchronized, rehearsed. I rose. I cleared my throat. The room fell silent. My mother trusted me, maybe not in your eyes, but in hers. I produced the letter from my pocket. Eyes widened. I demanded Marcus prove the corrected will's authenticity. His face faltered, then cracked into a condescending laugh. Bring me evidence, child. The crowd shifted. Murmurs rose. Their show of unity dissolved. Later, Sam and I pored over his corrected will. Missing signature page, seals that didn't match her prior documents, notary marks that looked erased. Sam tapped on inconsistencies, already drafting motions to nullify it. I retreated to my bedroom, lit the emerald candle, held the letter to my chest. I whispered in the dark, they can't force me out of my legacy anymore. Sleep came, but not rest. My phone buzzed against the nightstand. A message. That will you saw. It's not real. Be careful. My heart jolted. Someone was watching. Someone knew I'd seen. I laid the letter face down on the bedside table. My fingers hovered, then curled. I muttered into the quiet, "Welcome to the fight, Dad." The morning after felt like walking through fog. My body moved, but my mind stayed trapped in that message. That will you saw, it's not real. Be careful. I stared at it until my phone dimmed. For a moment, I thought about leaving Kerrville altogether. Just driving back to Austin, packing my things, and pretending none of this ever happened. Let them rot in their guilt. Let them choke on their lies. But every time I pictured leaving, I saw my mother sitting alone at that old kitchen table, eyes tired but patient, waiting for someone to believe her. I made myself coffee and sat on the porch steps as dawn crept in. The sky was dull gray, the kind of quiet that made you feel small. The trees I used to climb as a girl still stood, gnarled and strong. I wrapped both hands around the mug and whispered, "Is fighting for the truth worth losing what little peace I have left?" The question hung there, unanswered. The silence felt like surrender, but I didn't fight it. Maybe surrender was easier. Maybe I'd already given too much. That afternoon, Aunt Gloria showed up without warning. She carried a casserole and a storm of opinions. "You've lost weight," she said, setting the dish on the counter. "You need to eat." She looked around the house like she was taking inventory of ghosts. "Family is messy, sweetheart. Let the dead bury the dead." I leaned against the counter, tired of polite conversation. "You mean, let them get away with it?" She sighed, the way older relatives do when they've already decided you're foolish. "Your mother, she was delicate, Danielle. You know that. Sometimes she imagined things. You can't let grief twist your memories." Her words sliced deeper than she knew. I stood still, lips pressed together, staring at her as her mouth kept moving. Delicate, imagined things. It was the same tone people used when dismissing a child. When she left, the house was too quiet again. I stared at Mom's old phone on the table, screen cracked, battery light blinking. I played the voicemail one more time. "I think he knows I'm planning something. If anything happens..." The message cut off, abrupt. My thumb hovered over the delete button. For one long minute, I nearly pressed it. Maybe Aunt Gloria was right. Maybe it was time to let go. Then the phone rang. Sam's name flashed across the screen. I answered, still half dazed. His voice was urgent. "Danielle, you need to hear this. Marcus just filed to sell the house." I straightened up. "Sell it? The estate isn't even settled. He's pushing it through under a corporate name, a shell company. The buyer listed is Nadine's middle name." I froze. It wasn't grief that hit me this time. It was clarity. My pulse steadied, mind sharpening. So that's it. They're erasing her and me, one document at a time. Sam's tone softened. We can stop it if you move fast. Use the power of attorney your mom signed. I'll draft the injunction, but I need those original papers. When I hung up, I stood in the kitchen, feeling the weight of what I'd almost done. If I'd deleted that voicemail, if I'd walked away, they would have gotten away with all of it. Forgiveness, in this case, would have been permission. Mom's voice echoed in my head. Silence only protects the guilty. I grabbed my laptop, papers, and that emerald candle. My hands didn't shake this time. I scanned, labeled, and organized every page, cross-checking signatures, matching dates. I called the probate clerk and filed the injunction myself. The woman on the other end hesitated when I gave my name, but I didn't stop talking until she confirmed it was logged. When I hung up, the house felt different, alive again. My anger wasn't poison anymore. It was purpose. I looked around at the walls my mother painted herself, at the photos she refused to take down even when Dad mocked her for being sentimental. This house isn't just wood, I murmured. It's proof she existed. They won't erase that. That evening, I drove out to the garden behind the house, the place where her ashes were scattered. The air was heavy, the wind restless. I knelt in the grass, placed the emerald candle near the stone that bore her name, and lit it. The flame flickered hard, bending under the wind, but it didn't go out. I almost gave up, Mom, I said. My voice cracked, but not from weakness, from release. But I heard you. Thunder rumbled somewhere far away, the kind that shakes the ground before rain comes. I watched the flame dance and whispered, They built this mess with lies. I'll bury it with the truth. I stood, brushing the dirt from my knees, heart steady for the first time in days. They underestimated the quiet daughter. That was their mistake. I woke in Mom's old bedroom, wrapped in silence heavier than grief. My mind replayed every word, that message, the new will, the letter, like shards in my chest. I flipped open my journal. Under shaky handwriting, I wrote, Every deception feels like a drip in the soul. The memory of Mom standing at the doorway, urging me to trust my truth, came back clearer than the morning news. Tonight, I'd agreed to dinner, a so-called family reconciliation. I dressed carefully, not wealthy, not vulnerable, just composed. I chose the emerald scarf Mom once loved, thinking it would steady me. Sam confirmed he'd stand ready. Texts, backups, witnesses. If things turned, I wouldn't crumble. They expect me to crumble. I won't give them that satisfaction. The restaurant was polished, dim lights, quiet murmurs. I entered with Nadine and Marcus already seated. He pointed to the seat across from him, lips curved in a controlled grin. The waiter handed menus, and Marcus joked loudly. I hope Danielle's appetite is as bold as her accusations. Nadine smiled smugly. I kept my gaze calm. I asked about estate matters, voice soft but sharp. Marcus laughed it off. You're asking questions like you own half already. As I responded, waiter arrived with the bill. But the number was skyrocketed. The total read like a punishment. Marcus stood, voice loud. See how you cost us? The room froze. My face burned. The humiliation stung. I slipped out to the sidewalk. My phone buzzed. A post just uploaded. The same dinner moment. My laugh cut and made to look mocking, overlaid with, Inside, family secrets run deep. Panic flared, then clarity. My pulse steadied. The editing was obvious. Sam's message came. Save the original. This is manufactured. I stared at my reflection in a car window. How quickly they made me look complicit. Inside, I replayed both clips side by side. My original recording, I was laughing at Dad's joke about dinner, not finances. I time-stamped the differences and built my narrative. I drafted a message to Naomi, the local arts reporter. I have the full file. Would you help me expose them? I texted Joe. Meet me tomorrow. I need you on my side. I felt power shifting. I wasn't reacting, I was shaping. Night fell, and I found myself in the garden. The emerald candle sat on the stone, flame flickering in the wind. I recalled Mom's words. Truth is the last weapon. I didn't feel rage now. I felt resolve. I pressed my hand to the lit flame, absorbed its warmth. Then I heard a car door slam across the street, footsteps echoing. My phone in hand, I prepared. Someone watched me. The gallery buzzed with nervous chatter when I walked in. Mom had planned this event months before her death, her last curated exhibit. I stood still for a moment just past the entrance, letting the echoes of her work and memory settle over me. Light from crystal chandeliers bathed the room in a warm, deceptive glow. Marcus and Nadine were already there, laughing, greeting people like they belonged. Their unity looked tight from a distance. Too tight. I took a breath that felt like it might break my ribs. The curator tapped the mic, welcomed guests, then motioned for me to step up. My name came through the speakers. My shoes clicked too loudly as I crossed the floor. Eyes followed. Phones hovered. Rumors swirled in whispers. I gripped the edge of the podium, fingers cold. My heart pounded, but my voice, clear. Thank you all for coming. Tonight isn't just about art. It's about truth. I clicked the remote. Behind me, a screen lit up with the scanned version of Mom's original will. Dated, signed, whole. Then another. The altered version Marcus submitted to court. I zoomed in on missing signatures, dates that didn't line up, a smudge near the codicil. The truth doesn't smudge itself. People do, I said, scanning the crowd. My mother feared what would happen if she left it all behind. So she left me a story, a legal one. Marcus moved. This is outrageous, he said. I didn't turn. The curator raised a hand. Let her finish. My next slide showed Mom's handwritten letter, her exact words. Danielle, don't let silence protect the guilty. Gasps, murmurs. Someone dropped their wine glass. You tried to erase me, I said, eyes locking with his, but I don't vanish that easily. Just then, Alyssa rose from the back row. Her hands shook, but her voice didn't. I have something to say. Marcus spun toward her. Don't. She ignored him. Walked past the crowd like she was shedding her old skin. He told me to lie. I didn't want to. He threatened Evelyn. I recorded it. Alyssa held up a small thumb drive. I thought standing next to him would protect me. But I won't carry his lies anymore. She handed it to me. People gasped. Some recorded. Marcus paled. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Everything in me tightened, then loosened, like a knot breaking open. Some guests stood up and left. Others looked stunned. Nadine shoved her clutch under her arm and stormed out. A man whispered, "That's enough scandal for one night." Security moved toward me, but stopped when the curator stepped in. "She's welcome here," he said firmly. Sam leaned in from the side. "We have press inquiries already. This footage will blow everything open." The rain hadn't let up. It tapped steady against the tall windows of the Vexler Estate's formal parlor, where the air was thick with anticipation. Light flickered from the storm beyond the glass, but inside, it was the hum of quiet voices, phones silenced, and cameras being checked that filled the space. I stood near the fireplace, the emerald candle tight in my grip. It hadn't been lit yet, but the weight of it in my hand was grounding. Sam reviewed final talking points. Alyssa sat upright, pale but determined. Across the room, journalists checked recorders, and a few family members lingered like they weren't sure whether to stay or bolt. All of it, every lie, every whisper, every forged line, had led here. I could feel Mom's presence again, not in some grand mystical way, but like muscle memory. I remembered her eyes on me the last time she said, "Protect your truth." I had no doubt what she'd want me to do. I stepped to the front. The quiet fell heavy. I cleared my throat, locked my knees to keep from shaking, and started the video. "This is the full footage from last week," I said. "No cuts, no edits." The projector cast the raw moment on the screen. Me and Marcus at the dinner table. The real version. The one where the laughter was about a spilled drink, not about money. I let it play. No commentary, just truth. Then I switched to Marcus's version. Choppy, manipulated. I pointed out the splices, the missing context, the ghosted audio, and then Evelyn's letter. They will try to silence your voice, but it is the only weapon they fear. I held it up for everyone to see. Its ink a little faded, but her handwriting unmistakable. And this, I said slowly, is the original codicil, notarized, signed, filed with her estate attorney before her stroke, the one Marcus couldn't locate. Someone gasped. Marcus shifted, face blank, but sweat at his collar. Then Alyssa stood. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. I lied to protect myself, but I recorded him threatening Evelyn, telling her no one would believe her if she talked. She held up her phone, pressed play. Evelyn's voice wavered on the recording, then Marcus's voice, low, cruel. If you change that will, I'll make sure she regrets ever being your daughter. The room froze. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." A few stepped back from Marcus like his skin was radioactive. Nadine paled, gripped her purse like it might anchor her. I didn't move. I let it hang there. No speech, just silence. And in that silence, everything shifted. Marcus stammered something about misunderstandings and stress, but no one cared. A journalist raised her phone. "Why did you alter your wife's will, Mr. Wexler?" He said nothing. Another reporter asked if the clip had been tampered with. Alyssa shook her head. "I kept it off the cloud, stored on 2 drives. This is her voice. His threat." Nadine opened her mouth, but the words never came. She turned and left. Sam leaned over and whispered, "You just turned the tide." I wasn't smiling. This wasn't joy. This was truth, and it carried its own weight, heavier than revenge, lighter than grief. After it ended, I walked through the back hallway to the storage room off Mom's gallery space. It still smelled faintly like her perfume, lavender and something else. I found the folder marked "Find." The next morning, I woke not to chaos, but to sunlight pouring through the kitchen window. For the first time in months, my hands weren't trembling. My feet weren't bracing for the next hit. Just me, sitting on Evelyn's porch, a hot cup of coffee in one hand, the smell of lavender floating in from her old garden beds. She planted those herself, never let anyone touch them but her. I used to think it was control. Now I understand it was sacred. Yesterday, I stood tall. Today, I stand free. My phone buzzed, dozens of messages. Old neighbors, extended cousins, even people I barely remembered. All telling me I did the right thing. It didn't bring me joy, not in the flashy sense, but it gave me space. A wide, clean space in my chest where tension used to live. I jotted down a few things in my notebook. Errands, filings, paperwork, but I didn't rush. For once, I didn't feel like time was running out. Later that afternoon, I returned to the cemetery alone. No press, no speech, no distractions. Just me, the framed photo of me and Mom, and that emerald candle, the same one that had followed me through every confrontation. I knelt at her grave and lit it one last time. "You were right," I said out loud. "About everything. And I'm sorry it took me this long to trust your voice." The wind didn't answer, but I didn't need it to. I remembered the times she'd hold my chin and say, "Your worth isn't measured by their silence. It's measured by your voice, even when it shakes." I didn't cry much, not like before, just a few tears, soft and steady. Then I stood up, brushed the grass from my knees, and whispered, "I've got it from here." Back at the house, I sat down with my lawyer and signed the last of the papers. I officially released all claims to the business empire my father built. And twisted. I wanted none of it. I drafted one final letter to Marcus. No venom, just truth. "This is the last time you'll hear from me. I've rebuilt what you tried to burn, and I no longer need you to see it." He called twice. I blocked him. I took a crisp check from funds that were rightfully mine through Mom's will and made a donation in her name to a women's shelter that specialized in legal aid for survivors of domestic manipulation. I didn't announce it, Didn't tweet about it, just sent the funds and asked them to plant a tree out back in her memory. Then I walked out to the backyard, found the forged will Marcus had tried to pass off as gospel, set it in a ceramic bowl, struck a match, watched it curl into blackened pieces on the same soil Mom once weeded by hand. I wasn't erasing the past, just refusing to let it shape my future. A week later, I stood inside Evelyn's old gallery with a contractor and a new blueprint. We were gutting the storage room, turning it into a workshop for community art, a place where people could come paint their truths, no rules, no judgment. The show's title would be Unframed Voices. I'd already hired Alyssa as co-director, with a strict contract and clear lines. I didn't forgive everything, but I believed in consequences, not cages. Sam dropped by with something wrapped in cloth. Inside was an old voice recorder, one Mom used to keep her notes on. He hit play. Her voice came through, worn and warm. "You're my light, Danielle, no matter what he says." I didn't cry the way I used to. This time, it wasn't grief. It was peace, a knowing. I held the recorder close and whispered, "Mom, I finally heard you." That evening, before the doors opened, I sat in the office and wrote one last entry in my journal. This chapter ends here, but I'm no longer afraid to write the next one. Later, the gallery filled with people, local press, friends, strangers, some who'd followed my story, some who'd just come to feel something real. As the lights dimmed and the first spotlight hit the podium, I stepped forward. I looked at the crowd, some faces familiar, some not. I didn't search for approval. I didn't flinch.